Well, welcome to the first live-ish. Live, which means we are in person.
We'll do it live.
Version of the Cinescoots podcast. Yeah. We are recording episode. 6. Wow.
From a local library.
Because we're. We want to support the local businesses.
Support your libraries, everybody. Middle schoolers are here, not doing drugs.
Yeah. I think there's gaming chairs.
Yeah, it's a good place to be.
And there's an Xbox controller attached to the to the PC out there, so I think you can play games.
You can. This is the future that Ben Franklin envisioned. A place where kids could come and play Xbox.
And you know what? And unlike our local karaoke bar, people are not doing cocaine off of the toilets.
People are not doing cocaine in the bathroom.
Hashtag
I was censored.
Oh, yeah, that's a story for a different time. But anyway, today we are here to actually cover two movies. We'll be splitting these up into two episodes. We are going to be starting with
Robert Eggers' The Northman.
So, just for anybody who is uninitiated, what are his other movies?
The Vivitch, also pronounced The Witch, also pronounced Burn the Heretic.
She did nothing wrong.
It was a good for her. It was in the good for her genre of movies.
We need more of those.
Yeah, also pronounced Midsummer but better. That's yes. And then and then a recent classic favorite, Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, or as I like to call it, Robert Eggers' Hark. Yes.
We'll probably talk more about this. I think you and I are pretty in the camp of The Lighthouse is his worst, right?
Yeah, and it's not bad.
It's not bad, but
it's
out
good.
of the three, it's probably the one that I'm least likely to say, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna pop this in on a Sunday night.
I don't think I could ever watch The Lighthouse alone. I would need friends, and there would need to be inebriatives, food, a steak.
Yes,
a steak.
A nice steak
or
and
lobster.
And potatoes.
Exactly.
It's one of those movies that I never picture myself watching it again. I had fun when we went to see that movie. It was a double feature of that and Parasite.
I think we have to watch Robert Eggers movies only in double features from now on.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And then we rewatched it. And we rewatched it as a group.
At a Halloween party.
Was it a Halloween party?
I think it was a Halloween party.
Is that the same night we watched Jaws?
We watched Sinister.
Yes. And The Lighthouse.
Hashtag COVID spreading.
Dude, we did go into a quarantine lockdown after that. We did because
it was the best 2 weeks of my teaching career.
No, you recently had to quarantine, right?
That was when I actually had COVID. Actually, that was better because I didn't have to teach when I actually had COVID.
Yeah.
But that year I did have to teach from home, which also wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It was not bad.
That's a hell of a tangent that we went on to.
What a story, Mark!
What a story!
Can we invest in the DJ buttons that make sound effects, and can one of them be "What a story, Mark"?
What a story, Mark! That we could use a soundboard.
Yeah.
We can look into an Elgato. So The Northman, it wasn't until maybe a few days into going to watch the movie, before we went to watch the movie, that I heard that this was actually a retelling of Hamlet.
So not a retelling.
It's inspired by.
Yes. It inspired Hamlet.
Oh.
So Hamlet, for the unread, he's the
Javiers of the world.
It's the tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, right? So, English culture derives a lot from its Norse ancestors. There's a whole, mystical association with our Norse ancestry. Norse ruins were thought to have, mystical properties, right? As did most writing, actually, in the early to Middle English period, right? So, Shakespeare is partially drawing from this tragedy as well as other tragedies. So it precedes Hamlet. As other critics have pointed out, it's obviously a much grittier Hamlet. There's no real soliloquizing, and if you read Hamlet, he's not the manliest man in the world, which I have points that we might get into later. But yes, it is like the grandpa of Hamlet.
Yeah. For those of you who are listening and going, "Wow, Thanos sounds like a fucking nerd," he is. He is.
I am
he is
a fucking nerd.
He not just that, but he has a reason.
I have a
And the reason is that he is a high school English teacher. So,
yes.
if I feel like if anybody else had this in-depth knowledge,
It's not even that in depth.
no, but listen, talking about soliloquies and talking about all this shit,
Javi's like, that man just knows a 3-syllable word.
yes, I like to keep it simple.
Yeah.
I keep it simple and dumb.
Keep it simple, stupid.
Keep it simple.
Put that on the soundboard.
We gotta come up with little quotes.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like I told you that night that we saw it, having that background, because I think everyone reads Hamlet at some point, whether you want to or not.
Yeah, for sure.
It's definitely something that you are forced to read, usually in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I know I had to redo another reading of it when I took a college course on British literature.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think it made it easier for me to understand right from the get-go. And it's also not a very complex story.
No.
So the movie, we start with a very young child who looks like a little girl with his bangs.
A young child who looks like he should get beat up.
Oh yeah, Thanos' first impression was he needs to get punched in the face. I was like, man.
And remember, children, I am a teacher.
He is a teacher. So yeah, Prince Amleth. So he is doing some shenanigans with his dad. His dad is played by Ethan Hawke, which Ethan Hawke is having a bit of a resurgence. He's having his own renaissance.
Yeah.
I know it's been a while since he's done a lot of stuff, but he is in Moon Knight right now.
I had shown my girlfriend the trailer to this movie. She saw Ethan Hawke playing Amleth's father, King
something.
Aruvandil Warraven. See, it sounds very Middle Earthy.
Very.
And she's like, "Is that Ethan Hawke?" And I think that's my favorite thing when people watch trailers and there's actors that have every right and every reason to be in that trailer. It's like, "Oh, is that actor?"
Yeah.
It's like, "Yes, he works."
It's got a hell of a staff of a cast. I mean, Nicole Kidman plays the Queen.
Yep.
Who is
Queen Gudrun?
Yep, who is Amlet's mother. You have Willem Dafoe, who plays basically the King's Jester.
Yeah.
And those right there are big names. You have Anya Taylor-Joy, who's right now pretty hot, coming off of Last Night in Soho, which you haven't seen yet, have you?
I have not seen Last Night in Soho yet.
That's going on the docket for our Halloween movie reviews.
For sure. I'd love to see it, actually.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And then, I'm not going to say that he's a huge star, but Alexander Skarsgård, man, he tries.
He tries.
He has been trying to become a huge breakout star for a hot minute.
And he's doing work. He's also in something else that's out now, isn't he?
Is he?
My uncle mentioned something with Alexander Skarsgård. I'll say it randomly at an inappropriate time soon, as I go on the old IMDb.
I mean, he's in that Succession show.
He's in Succession.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, he's in Godzilla vs. Kong. I forgot.
Yeah, he plays the main guy. But again, nobody cares about these characters in the Godzilla movie. But
ain't that the truth?
Yeah. But I mean, the movie, like we said, the movie starts with this kid basically having his dad killed by his uncle.
Rewind.
Ooh.
Movie starts with this kid getting reunited at his dad, who's just gone and done Viking battles, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Then gets killed by his uncle, which is the very familiar main Hamlet beat. But what differs from this is you actually get to see the relationship between the kid and the dad, right?
And I really like that.
Yeah.
I think we're just gonna go straight into like discussing the movie, right?
For sure.
I suggest go see it if you're really worried about spoilers. I mean, if you've seen The Lion King.
Yeah, if you've seen The Lion King, you know that they break out into Hakuna Matata 2/3 of the way through this
Yeah,
movie.
absolutely. Yeah. But I recommend it. I'm assuming you do.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It's beautifully brutal. Beautifully brutal.
Yes.
Yes.
But anyway, so I really liked that they let you see that relationship between Amleth and his dad. Because I think it's easy to have like a Viking story would be like, oh, manly men.
Yes.
We're
Which
all
this is.
super manly.
Yeah.
And it is, but it also shows you that like a lot of these people are kind of good parents.
Yeah.
Like, it seems, at least, from what we are shown, that, I keep on forgetting his damn name, the dad, the King War Raven.
Aruvendil.
War Raven. That he cares about his son. He brings him home like a war prize. And he salutes him as his king, but he's like, nah, give me a fucking hug. I'm your dad.
They share a beautiful pagan ritual together.
They basically get high on peyote.
While stripped down to their undies. And you question for a moment as you're in the theater, you're like, how close is this to illegal? And you're like, not yet.
I'm assuming they were wearing some very modest underwear.
I am assuming as well.
I'm hopeful.
But the bond is definitely there.
Yes,
yeah.
and there's never a time where you are made to feel like Amlet has any sort of disdain for his dad.
Yes.
Like, everything seems like he respects him, he is happy, which is then, I think, a little bit more interesting when later at the end of the movie, like, you get some revelations about maybe the dad might not be what he seemed, or, I mean, maybe he was, but people saw him in different lights.
Correct. I mean, Amleth at the beginning.
Scared the hell out of me.
Exactly. Public library. Amleth at the beginning, it's kind of like that opening scene. Well, one of the opening scenes in Game of Thrones, where Bran is standing out. He's like waiting for the king, right? He's all excited. In this case, though, it's the same excitement, but for his father and his war party returning.
Mm-hmm.
Returning back, which for my Hamlet aficionados back home is a choice difference, because when you meet Hamlet in the play, his dad's already dead, right? And you just meet Hamlet like brooding and sulky, and just bitter and annoying. Where in this case, you meet an innocent boy, and the dad's very aware of his son's innocence. There's that whole little subplot about doing the ritual so his son can
become a man.
Yep. And then when you see that earlier relationship before his dad is killed, and then you cut to Alexander Skarsgård, right? In adulthood, I think you feel more of a genuine investment in the protagonist, because you're like, I was with this kid when he was a boy. He loved his dad. Yes, I'm excited that he's ripped as fuck and is going to go kill some Vikings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ripped indeed. My goodness.
Ripped indeed.
He's got gamer neck going, though. He stands like... he kind of reminds me of, like, Ugandan Knuckles, but, like, super shredded, the way he stands.
I have to, look up pictures of Ugandan Knuckles.
He's like... Oh. But that's how he stands the whole time.
Yeah.
But that does kind of set up the movie in a really good way. Like you said, you do get invested in his character, and you do care. You want him to get his revenge, and you understand why he has that revenge, right? You could have very easily started the movie with him being a Viking and wanting to basically go out and kill anyone, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that they took the time to show you what led him down that path was nice. But then that does lead to, like, my personal favorite scene of the movie, which is, like, the Vikings...
The raid?
The Vikings raiding the village.
Which you see in the trailer, for our millions of fans at home.
Yes. You do see it in the trailer, but it's definitely a lot longer in the movie,
which
is nice. You know,
it's not a trailer.
It would have been, but there are times where like you watch a trailer and they show you like a really cool scene, and that's really the whole scene.
Yeah.
And it could have just been them climbing the wall, chopping down a couple people, boom, boom, you're done. Yeah. But no, they show you the whole process of him cutting people down, taking women and children, putting them in a box, and burning them alive.
So this is what I find the most interesting about the opening of the film, which it's funny that this is a surprise, because like if you know anything about Viking history, you're like, oh yes, this is what they did. But like slavery and rape are very like forefront in this movie. Slavery more so.
Yeah.
The movie. So how shall I say this? The movie kind of presents them, and it doesn't get like a soapbox about them. And I don't want to say this and make it seem like, oh, thank God, like it's not condemning slavery, right? Like that's not not my point. But it's very like, this is just the reality of how things were, and it's still kind of like, for me, it was still kind of cutting, because like that's happening. Our main protagonist is right here, and he's just like, yep, like this is the way things are.
That's how the world works.
Yeah,
and I think it's also very, I don't say tainted, but it is tainted by our American racism.
Or at least that's how we typically encounter slavery.
Yes, like with us, slavery, when we encounter slavery in the United States, it's always like, oh, the black people were enslaved. Whereas when you look at the reality of pretty much history anywhere else, the slavery is just like, they're usually war prisoners and they get sold off.
Yeah.
And that's why I think for like a movie is like, oh, slavery. Odd. And
what I found interesting is that it feels icky in like a different way, because you watch any historical Civil War, pre-Civil War period piece, right? If you watch 12 Years a Slave, like that has a particular bite to it that is very, very tragic, especially if you're American, right?
Sure.
This to me has a very different bite, and I emphasize both those words at the same time, because you don't have like the textual cues in the film that are saying, hey, this is like politically wrong. Like you're seeing our characters, and they're, like I said, they're fine with it. They're fine with like, ripping out a bunch of like, wives from their husbands or kids from their moms, throwing them in the house, and just like chucking a torch at the
roof.
Yeah. And you're like, oh shit! Like the guy I'm cheering for is like also,
kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's done very matter of fact. Like even for the people in the world of the movie, they're like, yep. This is part of how it is. We understand basically the rules of this world. Like we lost, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's not like, because I am a woman, I am slave. No, it's very different. But it also helps that the movie does a good job at kind of like showing you just how the Vikings kind of work.
Yeah.
Which is like
weird as shit.
Weird as shit for starters.
Yeah.
Amongst themselves, they are really caring. Like they care about each other. There is like a sense of camaraderie that there is between them. Like we see that with like the way that he talks to like his own, Viking brethren.
And it's very animalistic.
Very animalistic. Kind of like it legitimately is like a wolf pack.
Yep.
But then, like, they're just rowing down the river. They see two dudes fishing, and one of them just, like, fucking just shoots them and kills them. No reason, no provocation, just for the kicks and giggles.
Yeah.
And they're just like, cool.
Yeah.
And these are the friends of the guy that we're supposed to be following.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's how it is. But then when it comes to, like, the people that he cares about, like, when he meets Olga and he... decides he wants to basically be with her and, help her out. He is very caring for her. Everything that he does in regards to her is very caring, which almost seems kind of contradictory with what you're expecting his character to be, this insane savage who's got nothing but revenge in his brain.
Right. And I think that's interesting. So like, I mean, so I know Scandinavians were naturally like blonde, right? And redheaded. I forget
redheaded.
I forget what the actual like myth and reality versus like Viking features were, but I think it's interesting that you have Nicole Kidman's character Queen Gudrun, and then you have Anya Taylor-Joy's Olga, and like they look similar.
Mm-hmm.
Which, shall we get to the twist?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are familiar with The Lion King, there's the point where Simba returns to the Pride Lands, and he's like spying, right? And then you hear Scar. And he goes,
yeah. But then Sarabi shows up.
Yeah,
and she tries to bang Simba.
Yes.
That's in the director's cut.
That's in the director's cut.
She's like, I killed Mufasa. Yeah. I convinced Scar to kill Mufasa.
Yeah.
And you.
Yeah, and it's only in the animated director's cut, not in the CGI.
Oh yeah. That one was too worn down by woke Disney.
It's in a post Me Too world. But Scar shows up and he's like Sarabi, and then you know that things aren't right. Between Scar and Sarabi. In Hamlet, Gertrude and Claudius are seemingly happy with each other, but Gertrude was never like, fuck King Hamlet, right? Like, he was a dick. In this movie...
yeah!
So for our millions of fans who want spoilers, you find out when... So, the whole movie, Alexander Skarsgård's been, like... voyeuristically like looking at his mom as he's come back to the camp, right? Because he is taking the role of a slave, so he can't just approach the queen.
Yes.
But you're anticipating that they're going to get reunited.
Like he sneaks off during the nights. He goes and he's like you said, he's spying on them. He's watching them, seeing what their interactions are like.
Yeah. So then he gets there, and I don't know if he actually said this. I don't remember, but. This is what I remember. I remember Rob Stark saying "mother" in the Red Wedding, but I don't think that's what happened. But then she's like, "Oh, Amleth," and then she's happy to see him. But then she's like, "Fuck your dad."
Yeah. Was she happy to see him? I didn't read that as she was. She was kind of like, "What the fuck?" Because they told you were dead. Because the guy did say that I killed him, right? Like at the very beginning, he gets chased.
Yeah.
He chops the dude's nose.
Yes.
The dude shows up and he says, "Oh, I killed him. I tossed him in the river."
And you find out that apparently, supposedly, as she's being carried away, Kid Amleth sees her crying. She claims that she was laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
Which I'd like to talk about perspective and reliability, because I had questions actually.
Sure.
But before that, like, I thought I remember like a little tender moment where she was happy. And
she kind of like off and on.
Yeah.
Like, I had a hard time reading that whole interaction. I was like, is she actually happy that he's back? Is she playing it up for him? Is she like, well, you seem to have grown up okay.
Yeah.
And your dad's gone, so let's bang.
Yeah.
Which, that was,
yeah,
for me, the biggest, like, what the fuck?
It was one of those moments where it gets very, like, not homoerotic, but it's very incesto-erotic. It's very Lannister vibes.
Yeah.
And then you're
it's
like,
very, what are you doing, step bro?
Are they going there? And as it creeps on, you're like, I think they're going there. But you're like, they're never actually gonna go there.
Oh, I was like, I hope not. This is getting weird.
Not either, but then they go there.
Oh, man.
And they kiss.
They do.
And they kiss.
That's so weird.
It's so weird. And you find out that the queen was enslaved by Ethan Hawke's tribe, and she hates Ethan Hawke. But she loves his brother, which I guess if we think about it, like, shouldn't she hate his brother too? I mean, aside from personality, right?
I guess it's kind of like the idea of like when you have a ruler, like they are probably the ones who are like heavy-handed.
Yeah.
And then like the brother's like, well, I'm a bastard. I'm never gonna be the king.
He is a bastard. That's right. That's right.
So I don't really give a fuck. I'll probably be more chill with the slaves.
That's a good point. So, bring that up. Yeah. The brother in this movie is a bastard. So he's an outsider too.
Yes. So I think that's probably why they got along.
Yeah. And she asks him to kill Ethan Hawke.
Yes.
And he does. And she's supposedly like happy about it. So it's interesting to see her as the slave, and then the other blonde, who's interested in Amleth, Anya Taylor-Joy's character, who's also a slave. In the way they just approach the situation of the film is very different, but I guess also similar.
Yeah.
Right? Anya Taylor-Joy is like, fuck these people, and then...
Yeah, she's very, very of the mind of like, it's you and me versus these rich people.
But I guess what's interesting to me is that it's just very... It is purely personal, right? There's no like big old principle of like slavery is wrong. It's like, I've been wronged.
Yes, it is a very like eye for an eye movie.
Yeah. It's
not like a greater good thing.
Yeah.
There is never anything in this movie that makes you feel like someone is doing anything for the greater good.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a selfish movie.
Which I find refreshing as birds fly into our window.
Yeah, it sounds like birds are like smacking into the window.
No, but I do kind of find that refreshing because it doesn't even lament that like, oh, if only these people cared about the greater good. It's like, no, like,
no.
Here is selfish people fighting each other naked.
Yes.
That's what you came to see.
Yeah. So eventually it does lead to the confrontation between Amleth and Fjolnir.
Yeah.
Right, and so they have like an initial fight. They have an initial confrontation where like he gets this pretty cool sword, which he is not allowed to use during the day for weird magical reasons.
Yes, I believe so.
So the movie has it toys with the idea of like the mysticism without fully going into like without going full ham into it.
Yes.
Right? So there is a really cool scene where he fights this weird like skeleton, like Viking skeleton in a hole.
Yeah. And
he has to basically defeat him to win the sword. And then there's this weird panning shot where you see him standing over the dead zombie.
Yeah.
It pans and then you see him standing where he was before the fight started. Which was cool because then you kind of go, okay, so there is some mysticism to this because now he does have the right to use the sword.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, was this all in his head? Was this real or was it not?
Right.
So that was interesting, which then plays into a lot of like all these weird Viking / Norse like mythologies and superstitions.
And how much magic-ish does Olga use?
That's the thing. She like, I don't know if she grows like a mushroom out of thin air or if she grabbed it after they banged.
Yeah.
Because she like randomly just has a mushroom. Then when they get separated at the end of the movie, she like carries him.
Yes.
Like to a hot spring.
Yeah.
And there's this whole like imagery of the Valkyrie carrying him.
Yeah.
Which is that shot from the trailers where people go, does she have braces?
And
then Thano had the audacity to ask me, is this Viking wearing braces? And I'm like, homie, no, it's not braces.
The Scandinavians are known for their medical care.
Yes.
We in this country are just leagues behind.
Yes, Vikings from what, 900 or 400 BC or whatever.
My name is Bernie Sanders.
They do say that she has Valkyrie hair. They make it sound like she has some connection with the Valkyrie, which then is strengthened by her having these weird like magical fits every once in a while, right? She knows how to basically make like shitty food to poison and like give people the shits.
Yeah.
she uses some weird wind magic.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It could be slightly magical, or it could just be all completely coincidental.
Well, that's the thing. So I leave that movie with a lot of questions on how accurate the things that we perceive in screen are. So, for example, we are introduced to Ethan Hawke and Nicole Kidman and baby Amleth, aka little kid Amleth, aka punch him in the face, punchable face Amleth, and they seem like a very happy family. Like the king arrives, Nicole Kidman looks excited to see him, right? She's like, Amleth comes in the door and she's like, "Don't come in this door," and then he's like, "Oh, but Dad's home." But Dad's home. She's like, "Oh, never mind," right?
Yeah.
And later with the twist, we find out that is apparently all a lie. So are we getting that all through Amleth's perception, and then it's just skewed? He sees his mom crying, as we mentioned before, right?
Mm-hmm.
She claims she was laughing, but I still have a hard... Like, even if she asked for, like, Fjolnir to murder her husband, I find... Unless she just, like, batshit crazy, which...
She could be.
She could be.
I mean, she wants to kiss her son.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe that her husband and son would just be murdered, and then she'd be like, ha 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 ha.
Yeah, because like I feel, I mean, unless you had to be a pretty terrible mother,
What she could be.
she could be.
Yeah.
I mean, she kind of is.
Yeah.
If you were go, hey, kill my kid and my husband.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, there's a certain level.
Little Casey Anthony.
Little Casey Anthony there. But I mean, it could be, and a lot of those scenes that you do see, like the Valkyrie scene, like you're seeing it from Amleth's perspective after he got the absolute shit beat out of him.
Yes.
So it could be like that's just what he perceives as he is like fading in and out of consciousness.
Yeah.
Right? Other than that, though, I don't think there's anything super superstitious-y.
It's not nearly as ambiguous as The Lighthouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like, The Lighthouse asks you to do way more like suspension of disbelief, as opposed to this. This is a very straightforward. Even The Witch, I think, asks more of you.
Yeah.
Like, especially the ending of The Witch. The ending of The Witch has a very clear, all right, from here on, this is...
There's a shift.
There's a shift, and then here we have, like, spooky witch shit.
When I watch The Witch, though, I do... Even though it's a shift, I perceive that as, oh, yes, these things actually happened in the world of the...
Yes.
In the world of the movie.
Yes. And I think it's because, there is a hard shift towards the end of the movie in The Witch.
Yeah.
But I think it's also sprinkled throughout the movie that when that shift happens, like, you go, oh, yeah, no, this makes perfect sense.
Well, but then The Witch is also, I'm forgetting, The Witch is also framed by that beginning scene of the witch taking that baby and just like...
Yeah, he's grinding the baby down to a paste,
jam.
right?
Making jam.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like, it could be, you could even frame that as, yes, there is a witch doing weird witchy shit, but whether or not that is supernatural is completely different. So whereas, like, the end of the movie goes, no, this is like witchcraft, magic, people are floating, and there's a goat that talks.
I love Black Phillip.
I wholeheartedly support the Church of Black Phillip. Whereas this movie does not. This movie kind of wants to ask you that, but it's also like, don't get caught up on that. Like, it's very secondary.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing that we really should need to talk about is the ending of the movie.
Mustafar.
So he decides he wants to go back. He finds out that his girl is pregnant.
Yeah.
And he says, well, if Fjolnir finds out that you are pregnant, and I already killed his son and stole his heart, he's gonna come after us. She's like, dude, what the fuck? Who cares? Like, we're gonna get out of here. He's not gonna find us. He's like, nah, gotta do this.
Yeah.
Which honestly, homie, cut your losses.
Yeah.
Like at this point, just leave.
But it's a revenge tragedy. I mean, that's what.
But it's the inevitable revenge tragedy, right?
Yeah.
So he shows up. He kills the mom, and he kills the brother, right? The youngest son.
Yes.
So this is his actual half brother.
Yeah, and there's some critiques, which we don't need to go down this rabbit hole, that are like, this movie wasn't brutal enough, and I'm like, he murders a child.
I think what they mean is like, it's not as in your face as a lot of other movies tend to be.
Yeah, but it doesn't need to be.
It doesn't.
When
it's a lot of it is
murder
implied.
a child.
Yes. Yes. I think the misconception is that the people are confusing brutality with bloody.
Yeah.
And gory.
So these are the people who don't like Hereditary, but stand for Blumhouse.
Hey man, listen.
I'm not saying you can't stand for Blumhouse.
These are the people. Let me rephrase that. These are the people that don't like Hereditary, but love the Saw movies.
Love the Chris Rock Saw movies.
Oh no!
Specifically. Excuse me. Love a victim of society. Chris Rock.
That did nothing wrong.
Did nothing wrong.
This is Chris Rock 2022 campaign.
Yes.
But so yeah, he kills them, and then he goes after the uncle. The uncle basically says, "Get the hell out of here. Go basically patch yourself up."
Yep.
And
we're gonna fight.
And we're gonna fight at the top of this mountain.
Yep.
And then we show up and we see that there's a dead horse because these people ain't loyal to their horses. Ain't loyal. Yeah. They just kill horses left and right. I'm sorry, I can't imagine horses being cheap.
No.
Even back then.
I agree.
And then you have a wonderful fight.
Yeah.
Where the uncle and Alexander Skarsgård are buck-ass naked. Fighting. And all things considered, this was probably one of both the strongest and the weakest scenes visually for me.
Why weakest, would you say?
So it looked really cool. I think the colors looked really cool, but also there was something about it that looked really fake. And I don't know what it was about it.
Interesting.
It was really cool though.
Yeah. I did not leave with the fake impression. I think I was just overwhelmed by the cool. And some people said it was too short. To be honest, to me, it was as long as it needed to be.
The fight?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it was perfect length.
Exactly. It's shorter than Mustafar, obviously, but that's universally too long.
Yes.
But when you're doing actual sword fights, there's not really, to make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be floating around volcano lakes,
exactly.
Fighting your homie.
But it ends with a decapitation.
It does end with a pretty solid decapitation. Yeah. It actually got to the point where they were fighting and he was getting his ass kicked.
He was.
And I was like, oh.
And honestly, Diane, I was surprised.
Is he just going to flat out die?
But this humanizes Fjolnir.
It does. It does a really good job at humanizing him. Yeah. Because you go into the movie thinking this dude's just a piece of shit who killed his brother and wanted to kill his nephew. But then you kind of do get that other perspective from the mom.
Yeah.
And you really don't know who to believe 100%. You want to believe Amlet because he's our hero.
Right.
And maybe you have some reservations about the mom, but then you do also have those interactions between him and his kid.
Yeah.
And even though the oldest son is kind of, Ezra Miller.
Right.
And, he looks like a skeevy piece of shit and his friends are assholes. But, his interactions with, I swore his name was Connor, but it's actually Gunner.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, that is a very, very stereotypical name. But he does seem to care about him, and he does have interactions. He tells him why are the kids why are we doing all this slave labor? Why are we tending the fields? And the dad's basically if we don't do this with these people, they have no reason to respect us as their masters.
Yep.
And that's just not the type of shit that you expect from someone who you are told is like a piece of shit.
Which is, so to bring it back to Hamlet, two ways. Number one, Claudius in Hamlet is pretty much all but irredeemable. I think there's one little argument that you can make in favor of him, but other than that,
yeah, but I mean, he's a piece of shit.
He is. Not with Fjolnir. Not as much.
Mm-hmm.
Not nearly as much. Number two, in Hamlet famously procrastinates his getting revenge, but he procrastinates it by talking. Whereas, and then granted, there's like a prophecy that affects this that Hamlet buys into. He also kind of procrastinates his getting revenge on Fjolnir specifically.
Yes.
But in procrastinating, he's like, I'm gonna torment the shit out of these people, which you could argue does, come back to bite him in the ass.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have just taken him out.
Yeah.
And he would have been fine.
Well, we don't know if he would have been fine, because then what do you do after you kill him, right? But obviously, these Vikings don't care about. Well, for them, it's fine to die in battle.
Yes.
Right. So he's not super concerned about.
Yes.
Yeah, what's going to happen to me after?
No, but there's also the idea like, well, now he just left Olga.
Yeah.
With the burden of raising two kids on her own.
So speaking of which, this movie takes place late 800s, early 900s, right?
Something like that.
So I forget what the prophecy is with Olga, but you see she gives birth to twins.
Yes, they have two kids, a boy and a daughter, and the daughter is seen wearing like a fancy helmet, fancy like armor, and a staff, so some sort of maybe like royalty-ish.
So she is, he meets Olga while in the land of the Rus, right, which is eventually what becomes Russia, Ukraine. Yes.
No, I'm thinking if that's in the story, that's where they meet.
Yeah, that's where the raid is. At least when they're canoeing, they're in the Rus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because then they go to Iceland.
Yeah.
And by the time they get there,
Yeah. And around this time, Olga of Kiev was a regent of Kievan Rus for her son Sviatoslav from 945 to 960 following her baptism. Olga took the name Elena. She is known as for her subjugation of the Drevilians, a tribe that killed her husband, Igor of Kiev. Even though it would be her grandson Vladimir that would convert the entire nation to Christianity. Because of her efforts to spread Christianity through Rus, Olga is venerated as a saint in the Eastern Orthodox Church, with the epithet equal to the apostles, and her feast day is 11th of July. So, I don't know to what extent, excuse me, that was Wikipedia. I don't know to what extent, like, he conscientiously was, like, trying to tie into
this,
the historical Olga of Kiev. It would be the daughter, I'm presuming. If someone was to be that character, it wouldn't be the witch. It would be the daughter. If he's doing that, then I'd be curious as to like why specifically. But it's cool to see. To me, Robert Eggers does a cool job of like exploring masculinity and femininity, right? Whereas The Witch is one of those. It does portray toxic masculinity, and it's also one of those good for her type movies. The Lighthouse is, very in your face masculine with like all those homoerotic vibes, and then this is also like very in your face, in your face masculine, ending with like the image of the, of the sorceress, giving lineage to her daughter. I don't know what to make of that other than that it's there. It's cool. Yeah,
and I think overall I really enjoyed it. I think it's like I said, out of the three movies, I do have a bit of a hard time flip-flopping back and forth between which one I like the best, whether I like The Witch or this one. I think The Witch is a better made like story.
Yeah.
But I think this one is a little bit more entertaining.
Yes.
I mean, like, there's fucking Viking fights and there's sword fights. Like, the Witch is kind of a drag in, like, the sense of, like, man, you watch this poor girl basically get blamed.
Yeah, the Witch is a good kind of, like, boring.
Yeah. I mean, it is the definition of a slow burn.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that this is a slow burn, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Like, shut your fucking mouth.
I mean, compared to all the other A24 slow burns, I feel like this is the least slowish and burniest.
Yes. It's very much an A24 movie, not by A24.
Yeah.
Which is, it's fine. It's perfectly serviceable. I also think it's very interesting that this is his, and I don't want to say it's like a bad thing. This is his lowest rated movie critically, like
really?
by a very little. Like like The Lighthouse is at 90, The Witch is at 90. This is at 89.
Okay.
Right.
So margin of error.
Margin, like very yes. Yeah. As far as like the audiences go,
yeah,
they rank this lower, significantly lower than The Lighthouse. Which I find strange.
Interesting.
Which again, you don't really know, like kind of like Marcus, like Cosmonaut Marcus.
Yeah.
Pointed out in his video, like you can't always trust.
You can't
like
trust
the reviews, the comments.
You can't trust the commenters.
No, like there's people who are gonna give it a 5, or people who are gonna give it a 0.
Yeah.
There's really no like in between nowadays. But I thought it was interesting because like I feel like this is the type of movie that would play better with audiences.
Yes.
And I don't understand how The Lighthouse is edging this out.
Yeah.
I can completely understand The Witch being at 59. Yeah. Like there are people who are, I'm not trying to be like big brain here, but like there are people who are just not going to get that fucking movie.
Well, and also The Witch was like one of the, maybe it was the first, maybe it was one of the first, but it was like right at the beginning of that A24 genre.
Yes.
Right.
It was, and probably a lot of people haven't seen it since they discovered A24 or these types of movies, and they haven't gone back and maybe reevaluated it. But it is, I can completely understand that it just does not, it is not fathomable to me that The Lighthouse is doing better than The Northman.
Yeah. But
critically, I mean, money-wise, despite it being at the tail end of a pandemic, it is making more money than The Lighthouse.
And isn't that all that matters? And as some have said, props to the studio giving Robert Eggers that budget.
But that's the only problem, right? So The Lighthouse may be making less money, but it also had a way smaller budget.
Yeah.
Whereas The Northman, I don't know exactly the budget of The Northman.
90 million?
Was it 90 million?
It was up there.
It was high. I think it was over 70. But 90
70
million.
to 90, yeah.
Yeah, Jesus.
Yeah.
Plus promotion and marketing,
yeah,
which almost usually doubles it. So it's not going to be making money. But I feel like also reviews, this is the type of movie that is not really banking on box office success.
Mm-hmm.
This is the type of movie that you put out and you bank on it getting really good reviews.
Yes.
And I think they are achieving that. Well, do you have anything final that you want to add?
No, I'm really happy I saw this movie. We saw this as a double feature with our next episode's film. Our film. And I was looking forward to it all week, and my expectations were met and exceeded.
Yeah, I was very happy as well. I really am looking forward to giving this another go.
For sure.
And I'm happy that I can say this is a movie that I can watch without needing to be A, drunk, or B, with a crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we will be back. I think we'll probably do this like week, give a break to do Doctor Strange, and then Nick Cage will come out probably the same week later.
Sweet.
Something like that.
We're going to do some time travel business.
We're going to do some time travel business. So we'll be back soon. We will have our review of Doctor Strange next week.
Yes.
And then the week after that, we will have a review for The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Yes?
Nick Cage, the movie.
Nick Cage, the movie. All right, I am Javier.
I'm Thano.
You can follow us on Twitter at the Cinescoots. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.